Okay, so you asked for this, and now I'm gonna do it, a tutorial on materials, the shader tab, which is this one, and the shader nodes. You might be wondering, what am I using here? What is this abstract thing? I'm gonna turn on another visualization, pressing Z solid, so you can see this. This is Cornell's box. What is Cornell's box? Cornell's box is a test for rendering, actually. You can look at it on Wikipedia here. If you look for Cornell box, first of all, you're going to see box, you know, that box for uploading stuff. But you will also come to these tests. This was an original box that they took a photograph in, I think, in the 1970s or something, to test if you could make a CG image that looked like the photograph. So it has a light source, white top wall, white bottom wall, green and red, and you are supposed to see how reflections work. As you can see here, the blue wall reflects, bounces light on the cube, the yellow on the red, so you get orange, etc., etc. I actually had it on a slide too, which is this slide, which is in 1984, a Cornell simple test to make a box, take a photograph, and then create a synthetic scene that replicates this. A Turing test of photorealism. One light source in the center of a white ceiling, a green right wall, a red left wall, a white back wall, a white floor. So this is what I have here. A box, a floor, and the other components. Actually, I could even get rid of that. Anyway, first thing that we're going to do here with the nodes. Whenever we have a material, we have a default material. In this case, this is the default material. I'm going to have a separate material for the floor. So floor, I'm going to press new. So I have a new material. I'm going to click here and name this material floor, because you want to name your materials. Going to, in this material, say I want to have a different material. I'm going to press the X, I'm going to press new, and call it Cornell box, and that should be it. Other thing before we start that is kind of crucial for this, I'm going to check render view so I can see some light representation. I'm using Blender 2.4, which has ray tracing. Press ray tracing. Ray tracing enables some bouncing light reflections that are very nice. And we will add another thing, which is a glove, like an environment light. So we click on the world in a skewer, we have color there, and we can click on the color and change the color. And as you can see, the color affects the environment. In general, for testing purposes, we will do color, and I will do environment texture, and then open an HDRI texture, which I have here on an asset library, and I will just use whatever light texture, this one, Tulum light, which is pretty nice. I'm going to delete the light, press the light and delete the light, so it's only being affected by that ambient light. And this is a good setup for testing. Okay, why it is important to have an environment texture? Because materials can be reflective, and an eye, for instance, without a reflection seems rather sad, and they need something to reflect. So for instance, I will select this thing, the floor material, and we're going to make it very shiny. Okay, so the nodes here. We have the material output, which is this one, which has 3 nodes: surface, volume, and displacement. In general, you're only going to use surface, which is like the wrapping paper of an object. And here we can change base color. If I come here, I can change the color of the ground. I can even use the eyedrop and select a color from the scene. I don't know if I wanted it to be kind of grass, I can do that. And I will try to match it as best the best way I can. Rather good. And you have other parameters. These are all ways to describe a material. So for instance, if you wanted to describe something that is shiny, 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 that means that it's very well polished. So you could take roughness down. And now you can start to see a reflection. In general, and you will notice, for instance, if you have, I don't know, a computer, a black computer tends to, like, you see more smudges. Because it's more reflective. So if I take this and I make it dark, it's very shiny. Darker objects are shinier. I mean, they carry reflections better than objects that are whiter. Like if I set it to white, you see less reflections. So I can put it this, and this is important if you want to make a material that looks like water. So roughness 0, if you can add a bit of roughness, so that's nice. There are other parameters such as the IOR, or index of refraction. If you make it higher, it will reflect more. If you make it lower, it will reflect less. But generally leave it at 1.4, something like that. And metallic makes the objects look metallic, so it has something to do with the shadows, but most importantly, it makes the reflection have color. Good. Other aspects here, and we're starting with the water problem. If you want to make this actually water, you need to add a node. I use a bunch of nodes very regularly, but if I press Shift A, I add a node, and I'm going to add a node that's called a bump. So I type bump, and I get bump. Nice. So again, Shift A, search, bump. And I'm going to connect this bump node to normal. The cute thing here is that you can drive properties of a material with an image, and that image does not have to be a picture. Okay, so for instance, in this case, I'm going to do Shift A, and I'm going to use a noise node, noise texture, that by default, I'm gonna apply it the color with base color so you can see it. By default, the texture is gonna be, this noise texture is gonna be that weird like multicolor thingy. And this noise textures has a bunch of parameters, so I can make it, if I change the scale, the noise becomes smaller, more like a television. But I can also make that image black and white. So how do I make it black and white? I add another node, so Shift A, and I type ramp. And now I put the ramp there, and as you will see in the image, now it became black and white. Ramps are very important though. I can push the ramp closer. So now it seems like it has stains. I can change the scale, and with this I can change the character like completely change the character of the scene. If I, for instance, made it like this, it's a lot more Marvel looking, right? If I click this and I make the color a bit lighter, a bit browner, okay, a lot lighter, it will look more like Marvel. I can add more stuff, more colors into the ramp. If I press plus, I can just drag this color here, check on that color and make it darker. And that way you can have multiple colors in the ramp. So a lot of fun. The nice thing, coming back to the bump map, if I check this, and I'm gonna take the saturation down so it's a grayscale image. If I check this and I take it out of base color and I just drag it into the height property of the bump, it will transform that black and white information into a grayscale image. I need to make this softer though. I will press delete to make that pattern smoother. It will take a while, but immediately that thing that looked like marble, when it's interpreted as a simulation of height, it just looks like water. I will probably have to make the scale a bit larger, but that's it. It looks like water. If you want to make the water more like less computer looking like, there are many ways to do it, but one classic one that people often don't use is that you combine multiple textures. So I can click and drag, select both of these, Shift D to copy, just like you do on the viewport, and I'm going to combine the colors. So I can combine by pressing Shift A, search, mix, color, and automatically one color gets into the A slot. I'm going to put this one in the B slot, and it's going to take a while to update, but I'm going to change the scale of this one so that we have like a big water pattern. I'm going to make the color of this one also lighter so that we have both. You can see that now, right? We have like big waves and smaller waves. It just takes a while, but the point is to have big waves, big and small waves. Yeah, so now it looks like better water in a way, right? And that is by combining two textures, two noise textures into the bump map. You can see now that like this was texture 1 and this is texture 2. So pretty neat. Distortion sometimes works out pretty well for water, and that is a property of noise. Okay, roughness is important too, again, but since this is water, we're gonna keep roughness to 0. It's almost kind of like a classic, right? Now, for the box. The description of the Cornell box says that it has, I think, a left wall that is red and a right wall that is yellow, if I'm not wrong. Green. Yeah. So the left wall is red and the other one is green. How do you add more than one material to a single object? I'm gonna go into edit mode here. I have the box here. And I'm gonna press and I'm gonna go into my material tab. And I'm going to add, I'm going to press the plus sign here and add one. I'm going to type new. I'm going to type Cornell box red, just to remember, right? And I'm going to make this red. And then I'm going to press assign. So that's one way to have multiple materials in a single object. So again, I'm going to press here plus. Press new, I'm going to press the color, set it to green, type Cornell box green, and type assign. So kind of nice, we're getting there. We have ocean, we have a box with two colors. In regards to the light at the center, I could go here and do the same thing. Go press 3 to select a face. Select the face, add a new button, add a new material, call it emission. And this will allow me to check another node, another parameter here in the material, which is the emission node, which by default is set to white, but the strength is set to 0. So if I set it to 10, and I press assign, you will see it working. So it's pretty nice. Now, it's not completely effective What do you mean it's not completely effective? And this has to do with a question I had in class with differences between Eevee and cycles. We have this Cornell box reflecting on the ground, very pretty. But if you notice in the reflection, the reflection is not showing, is hiding part of the object, because the reflection only shows what is visible in screen. Here it's hiding the ceiling of our box because the ceiling of the box is opaque. Same thing happens with the light. If the light is visible, we see, if the object that is emitting light is visible, we see the effect there. If it's not visible, we don't see it. You could fix this up by adding a light, but it's also a good chance to show you what are some differences between Eevee and cycles. If I press cycles now, it's going to take a while longer to compute, but you're going to see that you want to set this to GPU compute and press denoise. But you will see that even though the light is occluded, it's visible in the reflection. Some properties of material might change. That happens a lot, but in general it works quite nicely. So we have the box. You can come back to Eevee because Eevee is a lot faster. If you want to have it like closer as a result to cycles, you can add an object called a light probe, which is this one, light probe, and press C to put this one up. And this fake box simulates, sort of like bakes the information from ray tracing, which is what Cycles does. Cycles is a ray tracer, so it makes very precise light calculations. Eevee is more of a gaming engine, so it sacrifices, it makes something faster, but not as precise. But if I press now on I have to go into the setting for here, and I press bake like a cache. And this might take a while. And it took a little while, but I pressed like cache, and as you can see now, the light works even if it's not visible. If I move this around, the object around, you will see that since this is cached, it's sort of like the light, it's like a ghost light in there. But this is a pretty useful response. Most people forget about the existence of this. On the third kind of object that we discussed, things that are biological. I will use a metaball here because metaballs are kind of biologic looking. So I have the metaball here. I will add a little bit of metaball there. Make the size a bit different, kind of like a pear. Beautiful. I would make, I don't know, I'm fond of the Cornell box. I think that is kind of a great place for making an exhibition. That little box. Good. So we have this figure here, and I'm going to right click and convert it into a mesh, and I'm going to create a new material. And this one will be a test of how materials work when you want something that is a bit more organic looking. So I'm gonna set it to fleshy. Okay. It also works for fruits and stuff like that, and candles. So I'm gonna set base color to something a bit like that. And the key thing for organic stuff is that it's subsurface. Subsurface is the color of, is a way to approximate how the material of flesh works. Flesh is translucent. Light enters flesh and it bounces out. And since underneath the flesh we have the skin, we have flesh that has a lot of blood, the shadows tend to be redder. So we will press weight 1. This depends on the size, by the way, and play with the scale option. So you will see that if we change the scale, the shadows become a bit lighter. That is because we're using subsurface scattering, and we have a light there. So that's one thing. You might want to adjust some parameters. Radius here, this property is the color of whatever is underneath the surface. So 1 stands for red 1, green 0.2, and blue 0.1. But if I set blue to 0.0 and green to 0, it's going to be redder. And there are some other properties. Other property of skin or fleshy stuff in general is that it's not very rough, because living beings have bodies that have moisture, because we cannot stand 3 days without drinking water. So I will make it that way, but as you notice, it's not looking like we want right now. I will make the skin a bit darker. Now it's a bit more fleshy, right? But I will also do this very important thing, which is to add and go again into the normals. So another way to add a normal is just to drag the normal and then select from here, from this list of options, you will just type bump. There you go. And I'm going to add a noise pattern, but it's going to be a Voronoi, which is another type of noise. So that was again Shift A, search, and I type Voronoi. It could be the other pattern, but I'm using Voronoi. I can drag color into height. You can see the effect of the Voronoi. I can Shift A, search, and add a ramp to make sure that it's black and white, and be able to adjust more easily the effects of the Voronoi. And I want it to look like skin. Oh, look, it has a face and everything. So I will change the scale, and I will change the type of Voronoi to an F1 smooth. And I will change the strength of the bump to be a bit lower. And change the scale. And this should be enough to, like if I make the scale a lot bigger, this should be enough to make this skin looking. And I think it is. By now you could adjust stuff like roughness to make it more or less rough, to change the strength or the scale. Perhaps that scale makes it not good enough. I will also choose my volume there, the light cache volume, and press make light cache again. It'll take a little while, but there you have one effect of the material. And you can see that it's also different when you're working on this one cycles. It is more efficient. It's kind of a bad case scenario, but it is more efficient, more precise. Ideally, my take, you want to try to avoid using cycles, just because it's prettier to make stuff using less energy. It's kind of amazing how precise it is. And some things in cycles you might need to adjust. So I can, like the strength of the bump, I will set it to 0.2, and the scale of the subsurface to 0.1. But that sort of works for materials. I hope that you find this useful, this 24-minute introduction to some of the things you can do with materials in this node. Bonus point, though, about some things. We can add another type of texture, another ramp. I will only work with noise in this tutorial. You can use stuff you find on the internet, but I can do a noise texture, for instance, for the base color part there. I'll go back here to the visualization mode so I can see this more easily. So I'm gonna do the noise. I'm gonna again do the ramp. Put the ramp here and here. And as you can see, it has very little effects. Oh, I'm changing the emission, which is not what I wanted to do. So I'm actually gonna get rid of that. I wanna change the Cornell box and press Command B. Can't find it, but I'm gonna add noise, and I'm going to do something that has to do with texture coordinates, which is a bit of a drag. Ramp, ramp. So let's say that the particular noise you want to work with has sort of a different pattern. You can change the detail and stuff, but so let's pretend it's more like wood. You can change that using something that's called coordinate. You can type texture coordinate and add a texture map. So you have to do vector mapping. And we will do generated in this case, vector, and we will add the vector to vector. And this allows you to do a bunch of things. For instance, you can change the scale here. So as you can see, we can make a pattern be more wooden-like. We can change it in many different axes. Now it's like a very 90s thing, but that's another way to deal with materials here. You can change rotation too, if you don't like them. Also use other objects to drive coordinates. Let's say normal driving it. You can see that every effect here is different. But as you can see, it's very powerful, this thing about mapping and texture coordinates. Much better. To make all sort of special effects. And with this, I'm going to go back here and go back into rendered, and you can see some of the effects of this strange cube that I made.